Gangnam Luxury Mall glowed under its towering Christmas chandeliers, a place where wealth moved like a silent current, and where Amara Thompson never expected her past to strike. She had just stepped out of a boutique, gift bags in hand, when a sharp command cut through the music. "Watch where you're going." Before she could turn, a designer heel slammed into her ribs. Marble met her cheek. Choppers froze. And standing above her was the man she prayed she'd never see again. Marcus Wells, the ex-fiancé who vanished with her savings and left her pregnant and starving years ago. He looked down at her like the old days, certain she still belonged beneath his shoe. "Well," he murmured, lips curling, "didn't think you'd show your face in a place like this." Amara pushed herself up, breath shaking but eyes steady. "You don't get to speak to me." "Oh, sweetheart," Marcus laughed. "Women like you never change." Then her phone vibrated. The name on the screen lit up the glass floor brighter than any decoration. Minjun Kong. Her husband. Seoul's most feared power. And he was already on his way. Marcus didn't know it yet, but the ground under his feet had just cracked open. If this opening hit you, like the video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales for more gripping stories that hold you to the very end. The moment Marcus's confused stare flickered toward the name glowing on Amara's phone, the atmosphere inside Gangnam Luxury Mall shifted. Holiday shoppers kept their distance, pretending to browse displays while their eyes darted between the woman struggling to stand and the man who'd kicked her as if she didn't matter. Amara steadied herself against the cold marble pillar. Her ribs ached, but the deeper pain rose from memories she had spent years burying. She refused to let him see it. Not now. Not ever again. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You didn't answer my question. Who is Minjun Kong?" She met his gaze without trembling. "Someone you'll wish you'd never asked about." "Scoff. Please. You always were dramatic." His fiancée, a woman wrapped in more luxury than warmth, clung to his arm. "Marcus, let's go. She's trying to start trouble." Amara opened her mouth, but another voice cut through the tension. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" Two mall security officers rushed toward them. One knelt beside Amara, inspecting her torn sleeve and the thin line of blood at her elbow. The other faced Marcus, authority heavy in his stance. "Sir, several witnesses reported an assault." Marcus barked a laugh. "Assault. She walked into me." The officer didn't flinch. "We've reviewed camera footage. It shows you making physical contact in a way that caused her to fall." The color drained from his face. Amara watched him struggle between arrogance and fear, the same tug-of-war she'd seen the day he emptied her savings and vanished. But now, the world wasn't tilted in his favor. Her phone vibrated again, this time a call. The screen lit up. "Incoming, Minjun." The officer stepped back to give her space. She lifted the phone to her ear, and the sound of Minjun's voice cracked through her chest like a warm, controlled storm. "Amara, tell me where you are." Her breath wavered. "Luxury Mall. Security office. Stay with them. I'm 10 minutes away." "Minjun." His tone sharpened in a way that steadied her. "No one touches my wife without consequences." He hung up. Marcus watched her with dawning panic. "Wife? You married?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Married? To who?" The officer answered for her, folding his arms. "Kong Minjun. Perhaps you've heard the name." Marcus swallowed hard. He had. Everyone had. The mall seemed to contract around them as they escorted Amara to the security office. Every step echoed with memories. Nights she cried in her car, meals she skipped so her unborn child might have a chance, interviews she failed because she looked exhausted and desperate. She wasn't that woman anymore. But walking past the glittering holiday displays, she felt the ghost of that girl trailing her steps. Inside the office, she sat while EMTs cleaned her arm. The sting of antiseptic was nothing compared to the ache building in her chest. She had rebuilt her life. She had found joy, stability, love. She had created a home with a man who treated her as equal and sacred. Yet in a single unexpected moment, Marcus had dragged her back into a room she thought she'd locked forever. "Ma'am," the officer said gently, "your husband has requested we hold the suspect until he arrives." She nodded. She knew Min-jun only made requests when the other option was a command. The clock on the wall ticked down 10 slow minutes before the door burst open. Min-jun entered with the quiet force of someone who never needed to raise his voice to be heard. His black coat fell over tailored shoulders, and the cold wind behind him seemed to bow out of respect. His gaze swept the room until it landed on her. Everything hardened, then softened, then hardened again like steel adjusting temperature. He crossed to her and kneeled beside her chair. "Amara." She shook her head. "I'm fine." His eyes flicked to her torn dress, the redness forming along her ribs, the bandage on her elbow. "You are not fine," he said, each word controlled but terrifying in its restraint. The officer cleared his throat. "Mr. Kong, we have the suspect detained." "Show me." They led him to the adjacent room where Marcus sat, hands cuffed, still spitting excuses at anyone who would listen. His voice faltered when Min-jun entered. I didn't know who she was. I swear I didn't know." "That's the problem," Min-jun said quietly. "You believed she was no one." There was no shouting, no threats, no theatrics. Just a silence so heavy Marcus seemed to shrink inside it. Amara watched through the window, heart pounding at the stillness of Min-jun's posture. His presence alone pressed consequences into the air. "Tell me," Min-jun said to Marcus, "what gave you the right to touch my wife?" Marcus stuttered. I wasn't trying to hurt." "You did," Min-jun answered simply. "And now you will face what comes next." The officers escorted Marcus out to be transferred to police custody. Not at Min-jun's demand, but at theirs. Footage, witness statements, and a written confession they insisted he sign made the case airtight. As the door shut behind him, Amara felt something inside her loosen. A knot she had carried for years dissolved thread by thread. On the drive home, Seoul's lights reflected across the car windows like blurred constellations. Min-jun held her hand without speaking, his thumb tracing steady circles. He didn't ask questions or try to rewrite her pain. He simply made space for it to exist without consuming her. When they arrived at the penthouse, he helped her out of her coat and guided her to the sofa. "Talk to me," he said softly. She exhaled. "I thought I was done with him. I thought he couldn't touch me anymore, literally or emotionally. But when I saw his face..." "You were blindsided," he said. "That doesn't make you weak." She leaned into him. For years, she had been alone with her memories. Tonight reminded her how far she had come. The next morning everything changed. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from friends, co-workers, and strangers who had seen the security footage circulating online. The internet was ablaze with commentary. Under a clip of Marcus kicking her were thousands of comments. "This is disgusting." "Proud of the woman who stood her ground." "Hope she gets justice." And she was getting it. More swiftly than she expected. His employer placed him on immediate suspension pending investigation. His fiancée's family released a statement condemning his behavior. His father issued an apology on behalf of their household. That evening, a news anchor summarized it plainly. Marcus Wells, son of investment magnate Daniel Wells, is facing multiple charges including assault, theft, and fraud following new evidence submitted to police. Amara sat on the couch, watching as each brick of his carefully curated life was dismantled. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel sorrow. She felt closure, clean, final, inevitable. A week later, Marcus sent a formal apology letter through his lawyer. He admitted wrongdoing. He acknowledged her suffering. He offered restitution. She accepted the apology, not because he deserved her forgiveness, but because she deserved her peace. The turning point came when he was sentenced. 6 months in prison for assault. 2 years probation for fraud. Mandatory counseling. Financial penalties. Employment restrictions. The courtroom camera caught his expression when the judge delivered the sentence, A stunned, hollow resignation. The internet shared that screenshot for days. Amara watched the live stream from home. She didn't need to be there. She didn't need to see him again. But she needed to hear the verdict spoken aloud. When it was over, Min-jun kissed the top of her hand. "It's done." "Yes," she whispered. "It finally is." Days later, she stood at the window overlooking Seoul, watching the city bustle beneath layers of holiday lights. She remembered sleeping in her car, counting coins for food, whispering to the life inside her that she would find a way. She remembered Marcus telling her she would never rise. She had risen. She had built a home, a career, a future. She had found love that didn't crush but uplifted. And now, standing in the glow of the city she had chosen for her rebirth, Amara realized something powerful. Her story was no longer defined by what she survived, but by who she had become. She turned as Min-jun entered the room. "Thinking again," he teased gently. "Thinking," she said, smiling, "about how every ending gave me space for a beginning." "Then here's your next one," he replied, handing her a folder. Inside was an approval letter. "Second Chances Foundation. Official registration complete." Her breath caught. "Min-jun, you wanted to help women who once stood where you stood," he said. "Now you can." She hugged him, feeling the steady heartbeat that anchored her. This was her purpose now. Not to destroy the past, but to build futures. Marcus would serve his sentence. His reputation was gone. His privileges stripped. His lies exposed. Justice had come, not with force but with truth. And Amara at last was free. She looked out at the city once more as the night deepened, its lights painting gold streaks across the sky. Behind her, life waited with open arms. Ahead of her was a world she could finally claim without fear. And somewhere across Seoul, a man who once believed she would never matter was learning, day by day, headline by headline, just how wrong he had been. But the most shocking consequence for Marcus was still ahead. When spring settled over Seoul, Amara finally felt the quiet she'd been chasing for years. The hearings were over, the headlines had faded, and the noise surrounding Marcus's downfall no longer reached her. Instead, the foundation she had built was filling with women who arrived carrying the same kind of grief she once carried alone. Every morning, she walked the halls and saw pieces of herself in their eyes. Fear, hesitation, the fragile hope that life might still shift in their favor. And each time she offered support, she felt another layer of her own past loosen its grip. One evening, as the last light spilled across the foundation's rooftop garden, she paused to watch the city breathe beneath her. Min-jun joined her without a word, his presence warm at her side. She didn't need reassurance anymore. She needed only the simple reminder that truth, once spoken, never lost its power. "I didn't think I'd ever feel whole again," she murmured. "You didn't wait to feel whole," he replied. "You built something that made you stronger." She smiled, letting the moment settle. The skyline shimmered like a long-awaited answer, a soft confirmation that rising wasn't about erasing the past, it was about stepping beyond it with clarity. And as the breeze lifted her hair, Amara understood. Surviving had shaped her, but choosing to move forward defined her. That was the real victory. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales to help our community grow.